You're listening to the Prepper Recon podcast. For questions, comments, and podcast archives, go to prepperrecon.com. Ready Made Resources is a trusted name in the prepper community because they've been around for 18 years. They offer great prices on night vision, water filtration, long-term storage food, solar energy components, and provide free technical service. Get ready for an uncertain future at ReadyMadeResources.com. Trading Post in the Woods is ran by veteran crisis responders who know how important it is to be prepared. They specialize in comprehensive natural survival remedy kits, preparedness and homesteading supplies, as well as skills training. Visit them online today at tradingpostinthewoods.com. Hey, Preppers and Patriots. This is the second half of my interview with Dr. Peter Pry. Enjoy the show. Going back to what you were saying about Iran, one of the things that Trump promised during the campaigns is that he would tear up the nuclear agreement that Obama and his administration made with Iran. Would you expect any type of retaliatory action by Iran? And if so, do you think that that's something they would try to do prior to Trump being sworn in?
Now, unfortunately, what Trump did say, and here's where he and I part company, although maybe you could interpret what he said broadly enough to say that it was tearing up the agreement. Trump said he would not tear the agreement up. He said he would renegotiate the agreement, or he would try to renegotiate the agreement. And I presume that means that if he couldn't succeed in renegotiating the agreement, he might tear the agreement up then. But his idea was to renegotiate it. I think the agreement needs to be torn up. First of all, it's not a treaty. It never went through, and yet it should have been a treaty. So it should be obviated, even if it was a good deal with Iran. It should be obviated because it's a threat to the constitutional order of our government. It would be the second big precedent where a president has signed a treaty, in effect on his own, without advice and consent from the Senate, has implemented something that is in facto, it's a de facto treaty, and gone around the Constitution. Obama's not the first one who did this. This is the second time it's been done. The first time it was done was by Bill Clinton with North Korea. People have forgotten the agreed framework with North Korea now. But that, in effect, was a treaty based on an executive order that was done without the advice and consent of the Senate. And Bill Clinton was allowed to get away with it. He did an end run around the Constitution. And what happened as a consequence? What happened as a consequence of critics in the Senate not being allowed to give advice and consent? Well, what happened today, is we've now got a nuclear missile-armed North Korea. You may recall that all through 8 years of his administration, Bill Clinton was taking credit politically for stopping North Korea from getting the bomb and for preventing a future where North Korea would be able to pose a nuclear missile threat to the United States. And that was all based on a lie. I was on the North Korea Advisory Board all during that period over on the House Armed Services Committee, and we were telling anyone who would listen, but the press didn't want to listen. We all know how in bed with the Democrats the press is. They would publish no criticism of the agreed framework of Bill Clinton. But we had solid evidence that the North Koreans were violating the agreed framework. The only reason they were signing onto it is that we were giving them free food and free fuel oil while they were building bombs and perfecting their missiles. The main thing, they didn't have a working ICBM yet, and they were feverishly working on that Taepodong 2 to try to get it to work so that they would have nuclear weapons and a missile that could reach the United States. And even to this day, frankly, the press is still covering up for Bill Clinton and Obama where the North Korean threat is concerned. Because even Obama's Department of Defense recognizes that North Korea has got two ICBMs, two road mobile ICBMs. When I say two, they have more than that. I mean, there's two classes of ICBM. The one called the KN-08, the other is the KN-14. These are mobile ICBMs, and they can reach the United States with nuclear weapons right now. Now, they're not all that reliable because they haven't been tested, but they don't have to be that reliable, especially if you're talking about an EMP attack, or even if you're talking about a regular nuclear attack. They've got, at least 6 of these KN-08s deployed. If only one of those worked, that's one American city gone. And they're likely to work at a better rate than that. If one of them worked and they did an EMP attack, it would take the whole country out. And they also got 2 satellites, the KMS-4 and 3, that orbit over the United States. And nobody knows if there's a nuclear weapon in those satellites or not. Those satellites are flying at the optimum trajectory and location to evade our national missile defenses and to put an EMP field down over the United States. So this is I think that the Obama Iran nuclear deal is no better than Bill Clinton's agreed framework. I think that when the Trump administration comes in, hopefully they're going to take a look at the intelligence or talk to independent experts, because there's plenty of evidence that Iran already has the bomb, that this whole business that Obama stopped Iran from getting the bomb and it has delayed them from getting the bomb for a year, and therefore he saved Western civilization from a nuclear Iran, is fiction. There's compelling evidence from the IAEA that Iran got the bomb more than 10 years ago, and that they've probably been clandestinely building up a more sophisticated nuclear arsenal, and just buying time with the Iran nuclear deal to make that fact irreversible by building enough nuclear warheads and enough nuclear missiles so that we won't be able to reverse that outcome, just the way it is with North Korea today. Where North Korea, has got so many nuclear missiles now that it would be very hard to imagine being able to take out the North Korean nuclear arsenal without our allies and perhaps ourselves getting nuked. That makes the situation tantamount to being irreversible. So we're seeing this whole thing play out again. So I'm hoping that Trump will tear up that agreement, because the agreement is based on the premise that Iran is not yet a nuclear weapon state. And I believe that's false. I think Iran has the bomb already, has had the bomb for quite some time, and even has at least has the capability to reach our allies in the Middle East, may even have the capability to reach us, because Iran has launched satellites on that same trajectory that North Korea has. Now, they are not in permanent orbit over us the way the North Korean satellites are, but they've demonstrated the capability to launch satellites like that. And the North Koreans are in Iran. This doesn't get mentioned very much, but North Korea and Iran are allies. They are allied by treaty to exchange defense information and share science and technology. And we know there are Iranian scientists that have been present at every one of the North Korean nuclear tests. And there's a team of North Koreans in Iran helping them with their so-called space launch program. Anyway, so the short answer is, yes, I would like to see the so-called agreed framework, the so-called, the Iran nuclear deal scrapped, and something, and realistic actions taken against Iran. I think I would be in favor of supporting, doing what the CIA used to be good at in the old days. Most of the Iranian people don't like the Iranian government. We actually had an opportunity a few years ago under Obama to overthrow that government if we had just supported their own people. We ought to be actively supporting dissidents within Iran, and I don't think it would be that difficult to support those people and achieve something like a green or an orange revolution in that country that would change the leadership, and that would be the safest way to cancel the Iranian nuclear threat, which I think is already here. I don't think it's a thing that might occur in the future. I think Iran already has the bomb.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. The dollar's lost over 90% of its purchasing power since 1971. Silver, on the other hand, has proven to be a very stable form of wealth preservation over the years. And where do you buy silver? Silver.com, of course. Silver.com offers fantastic prices on gold and silver. Check out Silver.com today.
In a hunt for jackpot, Jackals by best-selling author Mark Goodwin. Danny Walker's survival retreat has been devastated by violence since the detonation of the EMP. Regent Slusher's designs on absolute power have already brought him to Danny's doorstep once, leaving a trail of blood and heartbreak in his wake. Another conflict with a malicious dictator will spell certain death for the remaining members of the compound. Danny's only hope is to infiltrate Schlusher's camp and bring him down from the inside. It's a risky proposition. If he is caught, he'll be executed as a spy, but there is no other alternative. In this epic struggle between good and evil, Danny's mettle will be tested, his faith will be tried, and he'll have to dig deep for the courage to continue. Buy your copy of A Haunt for Jackals, Book 3 of 7 Cows, Ugly and Gaunt, in paperback, Kindle, or audio edition from Amazon.com today.
Ted Koppel mentioned in his book, Lights Out, that he believes Iran has dormant malware in U.S. SCADA systems. Do you concur with his assessment? And also, while we're on that topic, how would the recovery period of a cyber attack, such as malware in the SCADA system, how would that differ from the recovery period of an EMP attack?
Well, I don't know that there would be any recovery from either of those attacks. First, to the question of whether Iran probably has managed to get malware inserted into not all, but at least into some, U.S. SCADA systems, into some systems. We have one of the mistakes we have made as a society is, we do things like we buy SCADAs. We buy a lot of our SCADAs. These are supervisory control and data acquisition systems. They run all the critical infrastructures, how electricity goes into transformers, how natural gas flows through a pipeline, how water flows through a pipeline, that sort of thing. These SCADAs basically are like little computers, and they regulate how that works. And we buy a lot of them from China. And, we have found logic bombs embedded in some of these SCADAs. I think it's suicidal to be buying, that we need to start thinking of our critical infrastructures, our civilian critical infrastructures, like the electric grid, like the communication systems, anything that controls our transportation systems, business and finance, systems to provide for food and water. All of these critical national infrastructures that are necessary for our survival, all the components for these things should be made in America, not to be buying critical components that could shut those systems down from foreign states, even if we think they're friendly states, but certainly not from potentially hostile states like China. We don't even make any of our extra high voltage transformers anymore. We invented the electric grid, and we invented the EHV transformer. Nikola Tesla invented both the EHV transformer and the electric grid back at the turn of the century. And the first electric grid in the world was near Niagara Falls, New York. We invented all of that, and then we exported the technology worldwide, and because we made the parts and all the rest, we were an exporter of that technology. But no more. Now we've stopped manufacturing that, and we import much of what we need, including the EHV transformers. There's only 2 countries in the world that sell them for export. EHV transformers are exported by Germany and South Korea. And, we ought to be making those things here. We ought to be making our own SCADAs here, made in America. And, we're just inviting an adversary to insert logic bombs, even if they haven't done that, but they know how the SCADA works because they manufacture it. They're in a better position to attack it than we will be to defend it because we didn't make the system. They did. So it just doesn't make any sense. Would we trust China to make our aircraft carriers and our fighter aircraft for us? The civilian electric grid and other critical infrastructures are as vital to our security as our armed forces. So I'm all for making the components for those things here in the United States, and we should start doing that again. Now, going to the second part of your question is how long would it take us to recover from a cyber attack that shut down the grid versus an EMP attack that shut down the grid? Well, it might take exactly the same amount of time, which is we would never recover because if you have a nationwide blackout that lasts 1 year, whether it's caused by a cyber attack or an EMP attack, that would kill 9 of 10 Americans through starvation, disease, and societal collapse. At least that's the estimate of the Congressional EMP Commission, and I support that estimate. I think it makes tremendous sense. There's only enough food to feed a population of 320 million people for 30 days in this country. After 30 days, there's no more food. In fact, 72 hours after the lights go out, the food will start spoiling because that's how much emergency generating power we have in big regional food warehouses that keeps the food cool and stops it from perishing. So 72 hours after the EMP or cyber shuts down the grid, the food is going to start spoiling. In a sense, I usually get that question, in various forums, compare how long it would take to recover from a cyber versus an EMP. And it's usually a loaded question that comes from, like, the cyber guys in the audience, because people want to say, well, a cyber attack is much more likely than a nuclear EMP attack. So shouldn't we be putting all of our resources protecting against a cyber attack instead of nuclear EMP? So it's, in a way, a loaded question, The problem is, if you look at the military doctrine of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, it's not a question of cyber or nuclear EMP attack. They're going to use both of those things. Their plans basically involve throwing the kitchen sink at us. The attack will start with cyber, but it will escalate to using physical sabotage, like commando teams that go in and shoot up transformers and control centers, non-nuclear EMP weapons, radio frequency weapons. If you know which 9 transformers to attack, you can take down the whole national electric grid just by taking out 9 key transformers. You could use non-nuclear radio frequency weapons to do that, attacking many transformers, not just 9. Take a guess about where they are. They might be, the 9 might be among the 50 that you go, and so you go after those with, non-nuclear radio frequency weapons and physical sabotage. But the mother of all cyber warfare is the nuclear EMP attack. They don't consider it, the Russians, the Chinese, North Koreans, and the Iranians, they don't consider a nuclear EMP attack to be nuclear war. Because a nuclear weapon used for EMP doesn't generate blast or fallout effects or radiation or thermal effects. On a cloudy day, you might not even see it because it explodes in the vacuum of space. You wouldn't even hear it. The one thing it generates is a super energetic electromagnetic pulse. And they consider that EMP attack to be part of cyber warfare, and the biggest and the most important part of cyber warfare, because it will much more assuredly than a cyber attack or physical sabotage or non-nuclear EMP, will much more assuredly destroy electric grids and all the other critical infrastructures too, and collapse us as a nation. If they didn't do that, they'd be throwing away their best chance to take us down. Cyber wouldn't be as effective. It probably wouldn't be nearly as effective as a nuclear EMP attack in taking us down. It's a lot harder to pull off with a cyber attack. We have 3,000 different utilities in this country. Every one of those utilities has different SCADA systems and different software. You'd have to come up with a superbug that would be able to penetrate all of those hundreds and thousands of different systems. That's not an easy thing to do. And nobody has ever actually demonstrated the ability yet to take down a complex grid with cyber alone. Possibly one exception in Turkey. But even Turkey's electric grid is just is one grid. They don't have multiple grids there. And so Turkey back in last year, 2015, was allegedly attacked by Iran, a cyber attack from Iran, and it temporarily paralyzed the Turkish electric grid. So that might have been an example of where a more sophisticated grid was taken down by cyber. But again, it wasn't it was a uniform grid, and so that's the kind of thing that's more vulnerable. Western Ukraine, when the Russians for sure did a cyber attack against Ukraine, they only took down Western Ukraine because Ukraine does have different utilities, and so they weren't able to take down the whole country. They took down part of the country. Still, it was hundreds of thousands of people, and so it is a harder thing to pull off when you're doing cyber. And somebody, I don't know who said it, but somebody once said, when you go to kill the emperor, you must succeed. And so if you're going to go and try to take down the United States and take down Western civilization, you're going to want to succeed. And therefore, we need to be prepared to defend against all of these threats, because it's a dynamic threat we're facing. They're going to come after us with all of these things. To show how far behind we are in terms of the thinking, because I think our biggest vulnerability is not technological. It's a failure of strategic imagination. We're not understanding and reacting to the kind of threat that the adversary plans to throw at us, even though they openly write about it and they practice it and train for it right in front of our eyes. But our people don't seem to understand it and don't seem to get it. And that's because on our side, our cyber experts don't talk to our EMP experts, and neither of them talks to the guys who are experts like the Green Berets or the SEALs in physical sabotage. And none of them talk to the guys who work on radio frequency weapons. Well, on the other side, all these guys are talking to each other, and they're planning together, and they're thinking, how can we use these elements in coordination to make the most effective attack to take down the nation's electric grid and critical infrastructures and win a world war. That's how they think, that's how they're planning. The way the Germans had thought it through in World War II and conceived the idea of the Blitzkrieg, which was this revolution in military affairs that would nearly enable them to win World War II, because they had thought imaginatively about how to combine armor and air power and fast-moving mobile infantry and artillery to restore mobility to the battlefield and not be stuck in the static trench warfare of World War I. They were the only nation in the world thinking in those terms, and that had developed a strategy to fight war that way, a new way of warfare, the Blitzkrieg, whereas all the Allies were still thinking in terms of World War I. And that failure of strategic imagination nearly cost us Western civilization back between 1939 and 1945. And the only reason we didn't fall was because we had to learn how to fight a better blitzkrieg in the deserts of North Africa, on the plains of Russia, at the cost of 20 million, more than 20 to 30 million lives paid because of a failure of strategic imagination prior to 1939. And that's where we are today, I believe. I think we're kind of in the equivalent historically of the years 36, 37, 38, just on the verge of 39, when Nazi Germany was, experimenting with the Blitzkrieg and putting the final touches on it. They had experimented with it in the Spanish Civil War, for example, and they had done it in exercises and the like. And I think the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians, they have done the same thing. We've seen terrorists do attacks on the grid. Iran has done cyber attacks on the grid. Russia and China are constantly doing cyber attacks against us. Has flown satellites over us at the optimum altitude to do EMP attacks. We know the Chinese and Russians have got super EMP weapons. All the components are there. Physical sabotage has been conducted against various countries to take down the grid. And so they've worked out this blitzkrieg in cyberspace, this thing I call a blackout war. I describe it both in my new book, The Long Sunday, and in an earlier book called Blackout War. And that's where we are. And, I and a handful of other people, well, I'm no Winston Churchill, but, I wish I were, but basically you may recall, there was this guy called Winston Churchill who saw it coming before World War II, and nobody would listen to him, and everybody thought he was crazy. And then when he turned out to be right, he was made prime minister. I'm sure that's not going to happen with me. I pray to God it doesn't happen at all. But that's where we are. I feel like, we've got this handful of people who see the truth, who understand what the adversary is doing, and like Winston Churchill before World War II, we're trying to raise the alarm, trying to educate people, trying to get our side ready to deter and defeat this thing that's coming at us. Unfortunately, we don't seem to have a Winston Churchill among us, that is capable of inspiring and mobilizing the nation. Maybe Trump can be that Winston Churchill if he can learn to think in these terms. And I know the people who surround him understand this threat and take him seriously. Newt Gingrich understands it. I've briefed him. I've worked with him. Ben Carson understands it. Ted Cruz understands it for sure, and it looks like he's starting to bury the hatchet with Mr. Trump. Chris Christie understands it. Rick Santorum understands it. So there's a lot of people associated with his campaign near the White House. And our commission is going to certainly appeal to Mr. Trump and his advisors, and try to educate them on this before it's too late.
And what do we do personally to prepare against these types of threats? And then what can we do civically to urge our representatives to do what's necessary to harden the grid against these types of attacks?
Well, let me start with the second part first, the civically part, because that also, you ought to think of that as part of your personal plan. I am a survivalist myself, okay? However, I have a criticism of the survivalist community, at least part of it. There are a lot of people who have given up on the system, and they think that, well, all they're going to do is think about taking care of their families and sort of go into a fetal position, and the hell with the rest of society. They've given up on the system, making the system work, and they're just going to focus on their personal preparedness plans. I think that's a huge mistake. You're still a citizen, and it's not just an obligation, but it's a smart thing to do, to think of your part of your personal survival plan to be a good citizen and to engage in the civics of preparedness. Think of how, you don't have, whoever you may be, you don't have the resources that the federal and state governments have. You don't have those resources. Wouldn't it be great for the people who control those resources to do the right? That would sure prove, your prospects for personal survival. I mean, the best outcome for all of us would be to deter it doesn't happen again by getting our infrastructures prepared and ready and defended. The next best thing would be able to recover quickly, so that you wouldn't have to be on your own, fighting for survival, to as little as possible. Days are better than weeks, and weeks of a blackout that lasts weeks is better than a blackout that lasts months, and a blackout that lasts months is better than a blackout that lasts years or forever. So by merely exercising, it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't even take a lot of time. So it takes such little effort to be a good citizen, to exercise the civics of preparedness. And yet you could possibly, if you win one of these battles, it greatly increases your chances of survival for yourself and your community. So some of the things that can be done is, like right now, the Congress is trying to pass the National Defense Authorization Act. That's the defense budget in this lame duck session. And it's got a lot of good stuff in it to try to protect the country, including against EMP. I mean, I would urge everybody to contact their congressman and their senator and urge them to make passing the National Defense Authorization Act a top priority. Get that bill through now. Let's not wait till next year. If we wait till next year, it'll be a whole year before we get the defense budget through. And the military will have to wait a whole year, to get funding. It'll basically be giving a whole year back to the Obama defense plan and foreign policy plan, which is a disaster for us. So help these guys, build a fire under them, pass the National Defense Authorization Act now. There's another bill that Senator Johnson he's the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. He's trying to ramrod it through Congress right now, through the Senate. It already passed the House unanimously. All it's got to do is pass the Senate. You know, and it's the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act. You know, this bill would be an enormous step forward toward protecting the electric grid and all of our critical infrastructures, from EMP, cyber, all the threats I've been talking about. You know, it would be an enormous contribution to deterring and defeating the kind of cyber warfare I'm talking about. And it could be passed now if we can build a fire under the Senate to get them to pass that bill. Senator Johnson, you know, has come back, from the elections and is putting all his effort into trying to get that bill through. We need to help him as much as we can. At the state level, you know, people should call and write their governor. Governors have got the power under Homeland Security to protect the electric grid within the state, you know, just as they have the power to take precautionary measures to protect against hurricanes and tornadoes. You know, there's EMP from the sun, which is a natural threat, but also against terrorist acts, which EMP can be. You know, if they got hold of a nuclear weapon or a non-nuclear radio frequency weapon. So urge your governors to take action, to pass an executive order, to require the utilities to protect the electric grid. Contact your state legislature and urge them, the Public Services Commission as well. You know, so that you can have all branches of government, the state legislator, your governor, and even your Public Utilities Commission, you know, ought to be educated about the threat and demand that they do something about it. You know, this kind of pressure, so that even if we fail at the federal level, at least in the state in which you live, the grid can be islanded. You can keep the lights on in a whole state. That was a recommendation of the EMP Commission. If you put the surge arresters and Faraday cages and blocking devices in place, even though your state is part of a larger regional grid, you can stop the EMP from coming into your state and destroying the transformers and generators in your state and keep the lights on there. So your whole state could survive. People should be doing that. So those are examples of things. And at smaller levels, even communities, you can island a community, you know, a city. If you can't get your state to go along, maybe you can get your town or your city to go along and be prepared. Examples of things that can be done at the level of a community, for example. You know, I mean, every fire department and police department, you know, should have a manual siphon pump at their disposal. You know, these things cost like $25, but it'll enable you to get to the gasoline that's at gas stations. You know, when you go into a blackout, the gas pumps don't work because they're run by electricity. But if you've got a manual siphon pump, you know, you can still access that gasoline. You know, they should have they should have a plan to ration the gasoline, you know, so that you can use the gasoline in a community to keep essential services going. The police, the fire department, hospitals. You know, there's enough gasoline usually in local gas stations so that if you have a good plan, you know, you could keep going for a year, you know, just based on the fuel that's available there. Have a plan and this applies to individuals too. Every individual ought to have a siphon pump so you could get gas if you need it. Every individual and every community ought to have some kind of food stored away. You know, the more the better. For your personal food supply, I would encourage canned food, you know, because I know a lot of people like freeze-dried stuff, but if it's not, that's usually in metal and paper wrappers, and, you know, you could have problems with rats and rodents eating it, whereas things that are in cans, you know, I mean, they last forever, and they're rat-proof. A water supply and know how to use it. A simple thing for people to do. I mean, have a swimming pool, you know. You know, almost anyone should be able to afford it. It doesn't have to be an in-ground pool. You know, you can buy an above-ground plastic pool really inexpensively. You know, it's fun for the kids, but that's drinkable water. You know, it has chlorine tablets. It's just like reservoir water, pretty much. I wouldn't use the chemicals that are anti-fungicides, you know, because that can make you sick. but basically pure chlorine tablets. So it's chlorinated, just the way reservoir water is. That would be pure water. If you have so that would give you, 5,000 gallons. I mean, enough water to last a year. Have a rain barrel at your house. I mean, it used to be in my parents' generation. I mean, the great generation that won World War II and lived through the Great Depression. Those people today, we would call them survivalists because they were ready for anything. They even thought about, well, what do we do if there's no water? And the rain barrel has been with us like since the pioneer days. Now it's sort of disappeared in one generation. But my mother had a rain barrel, that we would collect water off the roof. That water is drinkable if you're in a really tough way, but she would use it for washing and if we ever had a blackout, you can flush the toilet with it. There are systems they sell where you can store a lot of rainwater that comes off a roof. You can make your own water filter easily with a plastic garbage can. You just stuff it with layers of charcoal and cloth. I mean, you could take even sewer water and pour it on top of that, and it'll come dripping out pure enough to drink. There are expensive water filters you can buy, but you can make one yourself quite easily if you know how to do that. 80%, 90% of preparedness is thinking things through and planning, and it's not spending a lot of money. Through simple exigencies like this, as I said, having a food supply, having a water supply, have a medicine kit and know how to use it. Have a plan. Where do you live? Do you live in a high-risk area? Are you a nuclear reactor? You might want to check the weather maps. You might not have to, in a crisis, you might not have to move away from that nuclear reactor if you're upwind of the nuclear reactor, because the radioactive plume from the nuclear reactor will go downwind. It'll follow the weather. So even if you're near one, whether it's a threat depends a lot on the weather pattern. You can harden your car against EMP. It's a myth that you need a car that is like pre-electronic age, 1974 or before. You can take a modern car and if you get ferrite tubes, it would cost less than $100. I think the material cost of the ferrite tubes, and then it shouldn't take more than a couple hours of labor. You can have a mechanic do it. Have them put ferrite tubes over all of the long wires in your engine. It's not guaranteed that it will make the car run during an EMP, but it will greatly mitigate the effects and increase the likelihood that the car would be able to operate. There are other things that are more expensive and more timely that one could do to harden a modern car, but I won't get into those here. But those are some ideas. Obviously you need to be prepared to defend your family. Thinking about where you live. Are you in a high population density area? Being in a big city is the worst place to be. Do you have friends in the country? Do you have a farm in the country yourself? Are you near the water? Can you afford to have a boat so that you can motor your family out of there? All is not lost, even in the city. You can, if you live in an apartment, there's no reason you can't have a closet full of food and water and means to protect yourself and hunker down. So those are my thoughts on personal and civic preparedness.
And then can you tell us one more time the name of your new book and where we can go to buy it?
Sure. It's called The Long Sunday, Election Day 2016 to Inauguration Day 2017, Nuclear EMP Attack Scenarios. And you can buy that from, it's online from Amazon.com very cheaply. As I said before, I tried to give it away, but Amazon would only let me give it away for 2 weeks. Blackout Wars is also available through Amazon.com. Oh, yes, and The Long Sunday you can get it in hard copy from the Center for Security Policy, in Washington, D.C.
Dr. Pride, thank you so much for your service, and thanks for taking time to talk to us today.
Oh, I'm so grateful for you to give me a forum so that we can talk about this esoteric but vitally important issue.
Whether your plan is to bug out or bug in, CampingSurvival.com has all of your preparedness needs, including fish antibiotics, long-term storage food, and water filters. Use coupon code PREPARECON for 5% off your order at CampingSurvival.com.